Welcome back to How to Change the World. I am Catherine Alonzo, and today I am joined by the one and only Tawana Nobles. Tawana is one of the founding architects and the CEO of the Black Future Co-op Fund. She is also elected as a state senator to serve within the state of Washington. And she talks about how all of her work is really tied together by her drive for and commitment to community service. The Black Future Co-op Fund is an organization that exists to ignite generational health, wealth, and well-being for Black people, for Black communities through Black community-led philanthropy. She shares with me in our conversation what shockingly low percentage of philanthropy currently goes to Black-led organizations and why that matters and her vision for changing that. We have a very weaving but interwoven conversation that touches on some really important themes for change and how you bring your vision to life in the world. I don't want to spoil anymore, so without any further ado, my conversation with Tawana Nobles. Tawana Nobles, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
I am so grateful to you for being here with us today and really excited to talk to you about your various hats and the passion that you bring to making change in the world. So to start us off, tell me a little bit about the work that you do.
Yes, well, currently I am in philanthropy full-time. Before that, I was in nonprofit leadership and ran a social justice organization for about 6 years. But 4 years ago, I co-founded with three other architects this organization, and it's called the Black Future Co-op Fund. And we really focus on funding Black-led organizations in Washington State. Really, the Black Future Co-op Fund is Washington State's first philanthropy created by and for Black people. And our mission is to ignite Black generational wealth, health, and well-being, which is a mouthful. But really 4 years ago, when our entire country was experiencing the racial uprising and the very public killing of Mr. George Floyd, we wanted to also respond to the emotions and feelings and racial unjust. And we decided that one way we could do that is to serve as an intermediary to create an organization that could receive funds and ensure that those funds were invested in the Black community, especially in 2020 when so many individuals and organizations were pledging commitments to the Black community and just ensuring that what happened to Mr. George Floyd did not happen to any other Black American. And so our organization was to support the many Black-led organizations in our state and also to really change the philanthropic paradigm. And so the work that I get to do at Black Future Co-op Fund is to help increase that 1.8% in philanthropic dollars that goes to Black-led organizations. I mean, that's such a small margin of the wealth and funding that exists in this country. And so we work each day to try and build relationships and partnerships and bring in investments that can help us to fund the Black-led solutions all across our state. And I feel very privileged to be not only one of the co-architects, but also the inaugural CEO of our organization.
And you said that, was that 1.8% you said is the number of philanthropic dollars that go to Black-led organizations? Did I have that right?
That is correct. Traditional philanthropy only invests 1.8% in Black-led organizations.
Wow. And tell me a little bit, Tawana, about your path here. Like, what's your story? How did you end up caring about the things that you care about and driving change in the communities that you are driving change in?
Well, that's such a great question, especially because we are nearing the end of Black Philanthropy Month. And this month we really celebrate Black generosity and Black giving. And I think that is how I started in this work as a young person. Our family modeled service. Both of my parents served in the U.S. Army, and so I learned at a very early age what it meant to sacrifice and give to others, especially as a means to protect your own country, but also to serve and provide for your family. And so my parents were the first model of generosity and giving. But over the years, our family experienced a lot of change and transition and hardship, and substance use entered our life. We experienced homelessness. My siblings and I experienced foster care. And the one thing that remained consistent was my desire to serve. I did have to become an adult early, and I had to care for my siblings a lot of the times and help them to get to school. I remember I would get us on a little community bus and make sure that we went to church, and my siblings are younger than me. But I had a lot of responsibility as a young person, but I took great pride in it. And even when we lived in shelters, I took on responsibilities voluntarily. I used to volunteer in the clothing bank or volunteer in the kitchen or help with intake in the front office. But for whatever reason, that desire to serve and give back, even when we had very little, or it seemed that we had very little, and when our basic needs were not being met, I still wanted to serve my community. That generosity just has lived in me. And so when I got to high school and experienced just amazing and outstanding teachers who knew my lived experience and really mentored me and connected me to opportunities to keep me on the right track, because I was a great student, a beautiful young lady, but I needed to have that consistent guidance. And I had coaches in my life who did the same thing. My coaches provided the same type of mentorship and support and made sure I can get to my athletic activities. And it was coaches and teachers and mentors who continue to inspire me to be generous and to give back in the same way. And them keeping me on the right track really influenced my decision to join the sorority that I joined, influenced my decision to go to college and get a bachelor's and a master's. And I have committed my life to being the same type of person or servant to my community. I want to return the type of work and community service that the shelters provided to my family. Coincidentally, the shelters that we lived in, many of them were ran by women, several of them by Black women, and they also took me under their wing, and I got to watch them and learn how to run a business and how to lead a nonprofit. And so much of what I do today is rooted in that generosity and giving and servitude to service to my community. And so I have so many people to thank, but I just have told myself, for my family and for myself and for my community, I want to make sure that I'm being the coach, the mentor, the teacher, the nonprofit leader, the entrepreneur, the founder, because the services that we can provide, the care that we can provide, the redirection or just belief in each other and other people can really help to change their trajectory, or can just provide enough stability and focus for them to stay on the right track and continue believing in themselves. And the fact that today I am a CEO and get to serve as an elected official really helps me to believe in the power of that community generosity. And so I hope to leave this earth knowing that I have given my community and my family and myself as much love and care and generosity as possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. And I just really feel that from you, that this this thread of community service has run through everything that how you grew up and all of your formative experiences, but also wraps itself around and runs through upside down, inside out, everything that you do today. So tell me a little bit more about your elected office and how that you think connects to your drive to serve your community.
Yes. Well, in ninth grade, my brothers and I were placed in foster care. We had different foster families, but my foster family was pretty incredible, and my foster father was a pastor. And so I became part of a first family. And also, my foster father was a train engineer and a city council member. And so I got to experience leadership and service in a very different way when I experienced foster care. What I learned is that lots of people, many people can be leaders, but when you are in elected office, your community has to choose you. Your community, at least the majority, have to believe in you and have to want you as their ambassador. And I was really intrigued by that. And I'm a competitor, so I like to compete. I'm an athlete. But the idea that I could continue my desire to serve and support others, but I had to have the backing of my community. They had to believe in me, which requires a different level of work and clarity in your story and who you are and clarity in your values. I knew one day I wanted to step up and serve my community in that way. And then senior year of high school, my favorite class was my government and civics class. And I became even more interested in learning about politics and government. And so I went to college, my undergrad. I studied U.S. politics, majored in politics and government. Eventually, I also got a master's in teaching and started teaching. But when I started thinking about how I wanted to serve my community and what type of office I might want to run for, the first office I actually ran for was school board, and I have successfully ran and won 3 terms on our local school board, and that was important because of my family, my children. I think service has to be connected to your passion and your purpose, and I was a teacher at the time, and all of my kids were impacted by public school, and I loved volunteering and serving as a PTA mom, but wanted to focus more on policy. And also had gained experience as a campaign manager and campaign volunteer. So I kind of knew what it would take even to run for school board. And then running for state senate was completely different. I, in fact, earlier in 2020, the year that I ran for state senate, had just said, I don't want to run for state senate. I mean, session is always in the winter. It's so gray here. The buildings are gray. It's just not my vibe. I thrive in like spring, summer, fall. And I had been asked for at least a couple of years by many members in my community and other elected officials to consider running for state senate. They felt like my background in education, my understanding of the importance of working families being in elected position, my understanding of needing to protect our reproductive rights, and my work that I had done on behalf of women and girls, as well as my additional professional experience working to lead a nonprofit and working on issues like housing and healthcare and education and employment, made me a really good fit for the seat. And I just said, that's great, maybe one day, but not now. And some interesting events happened, and I decided, you know what? Okay, I will run. I'll do it. And the time between me saying like I'll do it and maybe end of February of 2020, and then the 2 weeks later when we announced, I mean, so much was changing in the world. I think we announced, and then a few days later, the entire country, or at least our state, not the entire country at that time, I think our state was on a statewide lockdown, but our entire country was responding to COVID. And so I was like, girl, of all the times to think to run for state senate, you wait until there is this, national pandemic. So I was nervous about how we could pull this off, because one of the ways that you could win at the door, and at that time I was trying to unseat an incumbent and successfully complete a task that for 60 years many in our community had not been able to do. And so I did not think not being able to knock on doors and be in person would help, but absolutely being able to communicate my background and my story and my experience, and my desire to serve. It's not the title or the position. What I love is the job of serving my community and making sure that we can see progress and feel progress and make childcare more affordable and accessible and fund our public education system and help students to be able to go to college or create opportunities if they want to go right into a career. Like those are the things that really excite me. And it turns out that enough community members also believe that I was the right fit to be their representative. And so we won by such a small margin in 2020, but a win is a win, and others have won, by fewer votes. But it really was because my community called on me to do so. But I did have experience and passion and a background and a desire to serve that made me a really good fit at that time.
Well, and it sounds like that year, 2020, was just a complete game changer in your life. Because you ran for office, and then, of course, you were talking about how George Floyd's murder led to the starting of the organization that you run now. It's a lot of change in one time.
Absolutely. It was a very emotional and phenomenal year in so many ways. Even running at that time when I was the CEO of our local urban league, even just, pivoting our team to remote and making sure that we're still serving the community and being able to provide virtual services and get PPP out to community and also, or PPE out to community, but also like help people to access and provide technical support to, apply for a PPP loans. Like there was just so much happening, but I feel very grateful for the way that even in 2020, when our entire community and state and nation and country or world was experiencing something so traumatic, I was able to find a way to serve. And in fact, I remember when we started making calls to voters, it was so important for me to lead with, how are you? How can I help you? And it was a very non-traditional campaign because we were connecting folks to food banks, getting food delivered, helping people to connect to jobs, mailing PPE out to community members. It was a very different time, but it really was a game changer for me as a leader and helped me to strengthen my leadership skills when my community really needed me to.
Well, the thing that really stands out to me about that, in terms of it was a very non-traditional campaign, is that it sounds like you were in service. And you have talked about how important service is to you in terms of you becoming who you are today, but then also giving that back to your community. So how that idea of running a campaign that centers the idea of being in service, how is that translated to your campaign this year when we're in a bit of a more traditional setting with, not being in the middle of a global pandemic?
Yeah, it's such a good question because now it is a campaign built on the evidence of that service. So now when I talk to community members, I feel very grateful that they're not saying, 4 years ago, you said you would, you promised us you would. Community members say to me, we are so proud of the work that you've done, the work that you've done in education, the work that you have done for adults and young people, the ways that you have helped women and girls. Like they can point to specific examples. I spoke to someone earlier today who said, I contacted you when you connected us with an attorney because we needed help with my dad's will. You also helped my niece who was suicidal at the time, but we connected her to your mentorship program and she went camping with you all. And now she's doing well in college and thriving and alive. And she said, my son was able to volunteer in your campaign and now he's attending college at your alma mater, next week when school starts. So community members can point to these examples and can say, when I contacted your office in the legislature, you got back to me. When we said we had a question or a need, you got back to me. Regardless of if we agree on every issue or the issue at hand, the communication is there. There is a desire to serve and listen to and be as supportive as possible. So I think the the way that service is looked at is, then it was just my commitment based on bodies of work and experience of like, this is the type of person I will be in a legislature. Yeah. And now the support is based on, folks knowing that I did what I said what I would do. My values remained in alignment with my community, and we can see the progress that we've made and also the work that still needs to be done. And it will require a person like me in the position to continue that type of progress. So still based on service, but filled with lots of evidence in this position.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things I want to ask you about, Tawana, is how the various threads of your life, your work, and what you care about come together and how they braid together. Because I think something that change makers think about a lot and maybe struggle with them sometimes is how to tell their story in a way, they have their organization that they run for, but then they also have their personal story, and figuring out how those things thread together. And you have, various different hats and a lot of different things you care about. But how have you managed that? How have you navigated that?
Yeah, well, definitely it all goes back to the core of, I want to make sure that I am of service to my community. And I do believe it starts with myself. Like, it's not just a generic, I want to show up and do everything for everyone. The very first person that I make sure I am serving and the very first cup that I am pouring into on most days is my own. And so I try to make sure that I stay focused on like my purpose and why I'm here, and that I have the energy and the stamina and motivation to be able to do this work. And then second is my family, and then everything else outside of it. We created Black Future Co-op Fund, and so we created an entity that we absolutely believed in. I do think my work would be different if I, saw a job, thought it was cool, and just worked there. But this was something that we were able to create based on what we knew we wanted in a workplace, what we wanted for other team members, our vision for community. So I do feel like it is just an extension of who I am. But I also tell folks all the time, I get to be a policymaker that is still working on the ground. I mean, that's one of the benefits of being elected, but also someone who is still of working age. I'm not retired and removed from parenting and having to still, pay my bills and have a job so that I can make ends meet and pay my bills and take care of my family. Like, I am working for an organization now, and the organization I worked for previously, that kept me connected to the needs of community. And so when I go to our state capitol, when I'm in the legislature and on the floor and talking about the need for more affordable groceries for community members, more affordable healthcare and childcare, when we talk about community safety and how broad that is and the importance of universal meals, the work that I do is connected and it informs each other so that I can be better even in one place or another. The other thing that I love about being connected to community and having a job that keeps me like on the ground is even all the laws and policy that we create in Olympia, I am very careful about not blurring the lines, but where I can have very clear understanding. Like right now, there's a piece of policy that's implemented in our community, and it's providing funding for communities that were impacted by the war on drugs. And because of my knowledge of the legislation, I can answer some questions about the policy that's being implemented. And not, there's no insider information or nothing that community doesn't know or understand, but I can answer questions and help people to like read what's on paper and understand like the plan and what will and will not happen. And so I think I really just try now to utilize all the work that I do to inform each other so that I feel like my impact is even greater. Because I do think it would be strange to be a policymaker focused on education, but if all my kids were adults and I'm, not in school. My youngest son had his first day of school yesterday, and I dropped him off at school, and so I do feel very grateful for my school board experience and the fact that I'm a parent and the fact that I am still working. And so when I'm doing the job in our state capitol, I have these real experiences, current present day experiences to be able to draw from. So I feel like it helps me to be more successful, to have the things that I currently have on my plate now. There could be lots of other things that might make it feel less connected and like, oh, this is this pot. And I'm able to still fill the intersections while having and maintaining really good boundaries. I mean, when I'm working for Black Future Co-op Fund, I am not Senator Nobles, and I don't carry myself to be like, well, I'm the senator, I know it all. Even when people are talking about legislation and pieces, I don't feel the need to be like, well, I'm the expert. And it's the same, even though I have a job that keeps me rooted in community, I'm not the community expert. Community is the expert of what they need. And so I still manage really good boundaries, but I can see how all of my work really informs each other and all the pieces.
Yeah, well, I really love that dichotomy, is that the word, that balance, that it's a balance between the work threads together and reinforces and connects, but there are boundaries. There has to be boundaries. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's potentially a part that gets lost sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick ad break. I have a lot of different questions for you, and we will, I want to dig into more of the work that you do at the Black Future Co-op Fund. But let's take a quick break, and then we will be right back. You seeking to create change at the polls? Us too. With Javelina's long history of running winning campaigns, we've learned a thing or two about mobilizing communities. And we know that success isn't about reaching every voter, it's about reaching the right voters. Head over to javelina.co today to sign up for a free consultation and learn how our tailored direct mail services bring voters into your story and drive your campaign to victory. Okay, great. So let's talk about the Black Future Co-op Fund. So when you think about the future, you think about your vision for how you want the world to be different when the vision and the mission of the Black Future Co-op Fund is complete. What does that world look like?
Yeah, definitely. I see a world where there is far more trust-based philanthropy. There is a lot of wealth that exists, not just in our state, but all across this country, all around the world. And I know this because, I fundraise for a lot of the things that I have to do. That's a big part of my professional work. And so there is wealth. I want to see folks, especially in philanthropy, trust community and trust that community knows what it needs, that every segment of our community knows what it needs, and folks who have resources can invest based on trusting that community is doing the work and will continue to do the work, but needs access to capital. And that's actually not exempt to the nonprofits, or not exempt, but that's not unique or only for the nonprofits that we work with, but also for-profit organizations. But I see more trust-based philanthropy. I see that percentage, that 1.8% that I quoted earlier, increased significantly, where there is just simply more investment into Black-led solutions and Black-led organizations. I also see a Washington state where we are actually not just funding the solutions from these organizations, but also we're listening to and implementing the solutions that these organizations are working on. So when we talk about Black health, I see Black health leaders being listened to. I see more Black healthcare centers. I see, when we talk about education, more Black educators in schools. We talk about this opportunity gap between Black students and white students, or Black students and other subgroups of students, and this desire for more Black educators. But I see a future where it's realized we have more Black educators, and we have more capital for our Black business owners. So I think if, Black Future Co-op Fund is able to fully live out its mission, because it's not just our investments, we want to make an impact and inspire and influence philanthropy all over, to try this trust-based philanthropy to make it easier for community members to access capital, and to then implement these strategies that are being shared and worked on day in and day out, including policymakers. We have really incredible organizations who have figured out great solutions to a lot of our problems. And if we can just simply scale some of those solutions, we'd see lots of success. So I see policymakers and funders, investors really leaning into those trust-based relationships and empowering community even more, or I should say amplifying the power that's already in community.
So let me ask you a little bit more about trust-based philanthropy, because I'm really intrigued by this. So if the predominant paradigm we have today is not trust-based philanthropy, and what you envision at the cap of your work, if you will, the ultimate end of your work is trust-based philanthropy. Talk me through some of the things that are different. Like, what are some of the practices and norms today that you would see changed? Yes,
we would see more relationship versus transaction. So right now in philanthropy, a funder may have an application online, and you go and you find this link, you complete an application. A group or individual will determine if you'll get a grant or funding or not. If you do, the exchange is, please send us pictures, reporting, please amplify our corporation, company, foundation, share our logo, tell everyone that we did this for you, please. And I just feel like, or we could manage relationships with organizations, which is what we do. We travel the state. We're seeing the work that's out there, so we're familiar. We fund the work that we know, we've seen, it's been demonstrated, proven, because we're out in community. We're not asking anyone to come to us and prove to us that you're worthy of these funds. We're out in community, so we see it. And then we say, and there's no application to access the funds. We have money to invest. You have incredible community-led solutions, and you're solving problems and doing great work. We want to fund that. You're helping people. You're making a difference. That's what we want to see. And so we want to fund that work. And then we want to manage and maintain a relationship instead of you having to submit multiple pages of reporting, because our relationship will allow us to continue supporting your work. And in the case of Black Future Co-op Fund, instead of us saying, prove to us that you're worthy and then we'll fund you, and then, give us a lengthy report to continue proving that you're doing what you said, we manage relationship and we say, we want to continue bringing more money your way. So if you're having an event, if you are launching a new project or campaign or initiative, we want to amplify it on our social media. We want to share it in our newsletter. When we sit down and meet with funders, we want to tell funders about your work. And not just our work and our strategic plan and our impact. We want to amplify your impact. We want to make sure that more resources can come your way, that more people can see your work. We want to tell policymakers about the work that you are doing on the ground. And if anyone comes to us to say, as many folks or funders do, we're looking for arts or education or maternal health organizations to fund, or we're looking for who's leading this work, we want to amplify and lift up our grantees instead of them amplifying and lifting us up because of our investment. And we also believe that with the work that the Black community has done in and for this country, the Black generosity that has existed since our ancestors stepped foot in this country, the labor, the production that this country has benefited from, because of Black bodies, the progress, the infrastructure, the brilliance, the innovation that has been brought to this country by Black bodies. I think it is a real thing when we hear community members talk about reparations and for what has been stolen and taken and for the ways that we have been redlined and excluded and legally told you can't learn. And then you can't learn here. You can't have these resources. You can't live here. You can't have this capital based on the color of our skin. This investment should be returned to community. I mean, a lot of this wealth that has come from the labor of Black people. We just feel like the money that Black Future Co-op Fund is not ours. These are funds that rightfully belong to community, that should be reinvested in community, returned to community. There is a lot of repair that needs to happen. And so I think philanthropy also would begin to realize, and instead of making organizations leap through all of these hoops to demonstrate why they deserve to have money, there should be this realization of like, so much has been stripped from this community. The least that we can do is make sure that these assets, these funds, these investments are returned to community. So I think there's a deeper meaning for us that we want philanthropy to really tap into, but removing the barrier of an application, focusing more on being connected and in community and building relationship and seeing the work instead of relying on pages of reports, and then amplifying the work of grantee partners instead of asking them to amplify our brand is what we're asking more of our philanthropic partners to lean into and help us to transform philanthropy to.
One of the things that really strikes me, Tawana, through this whole conversation is that there are a lot of different people engaged in your work that you intersect with, you communicate with, you persuade all these different audiences for different things at different times. And I'm curious how you think about that when you are shaping a strategy for in your Senate role or in your CEO role, or even just in the various hats that you play in the community. How do you understand, do you ever think to yourself, this might be a better way to ask it, do you ever think to yourself, okay, here is who I'm trying to reach, and I need to tell the story in this way so that it can resonate with them?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And many of the audiences or constituencies that I'm trying to reach, I belong or have belonged to. For example, there are some opportunities where I get to engage with and speak to youth experiencing foster care. I get to speak with funders. I get to speak to my colleagues who are also public servants, elected officials. I have also colleagues in philanthropy. So I am constantly thinking of who the audience is, and is it an opportunity for me to, really share my personal story so that someone knows like it's safe. I too have, a shared experience with trauma or shared experience in my family to help us to connect? Or am I having to really, lead with data and make the case because I really need to explain, how little investment goes to Black-led organizations. So I am constantly thinking of who is the audience and what do I need to share. And believe it or not, I have like the worst social anxiety, and so it's like an extra task of me figuring out like what to say and who am I saying it to. But I also have had so much practice doing this work and needing to connect with different audiences, but it takes an extra mental and emotional exercise for me when I'm thinking about who am I talking to, what do I need to share, how can I be vulnerable, how can I connect. Do I need to, am I sharing my professional background? Am I really just trying to, draw from what it felt like to be a young girl living in a shelter, sometimes by herself, So I am always thinking about who am I talking to? How can we relate? And how can I hear them? How can I be heard? And I think it's really beautiful. I tell people all the time, I have no embarrassment about any aspect of my background, from being a teen mom, from being a young wife, to having military parents. Like, every aspect of my story has helped me to be able to connect with community members. Mm-hmm. And if I don't have a story or a similar experience, my background also allows me to be in a space where I feel comfortable listening and learning from almost anyone. So whoever the audience is, I feel like there is a way to connect or a way to learn, and I'm here for it either way.
And do you have a definition of success for yourself in your career and your life?
You know, success for me looks like consistency. Like, I'm doing what I said I would do in the way that I said I would do it, with lots of grace. It's not a perfection, but I feel successful when I can fulfill my commitments to myself. And sometimes it's really small. Like, a successful day is like, did I wake up and work out because that is what really fills me up? And then did I complete the things that were priorities for me at work? But it's just consistent. Like, to me, that the follow through and consistency has a whole lot to do with success. And even if I have to communicate, I can't do this, or I'm unavailable, but folks knowing that consistently I will communicate with them and let them know what's going on. But it definitely is not it's not a dollar sign, it's not a degree, it's not a title. I like to be able to be consistent in who I am, consistent in my values, consistent in, like I said, who I said I would be, what I said I would do. Those are the moments when I feel most successful. And I think also, success feels like showing a lot of grace to myself and to others, and being really understanding. But it definitely is not, I'm not trying to arrive at a specific place. Right. When I think about success for parenting my kids, I wanted them to have a consistent place to call home. Like, that to me was a major success. And I think because of the mobility and lack of consistency that existed in my life, like, being able to produce and experience consistency for me is when I feel like the best and most successful. My kids knowing, like, I'll be home after school, or I'll be where I said I would be, or communicate something different. Like, those are the moments when I feel like we're doing this. Like, we're living. And of course, in all of that, it's lots of self-love and, like, love for others. I think that's, like, that reliability and consistency helps me to feel like I'm loving on myself, but it helps others to feel that love and care for them as well.
Well, and I love that, because you've mentioned several times throughout our conversation today, filling up your own cup, self-love, self-grace. And I think it's an easy thing to say and a harder thing to practice. And it's obvious that it's really front and foremost for you, and there's a reason for that's intentional. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that you always prioritize that?
That is such a good, I don't know how I started this, but I just have always realized I might have to do some more soul searching to see, like, when did I start realizing this? But for as long as I can remember, I have realized the importance of not sacrificing what's important to me. And maybe because I became really responsible really early. So I mentioned I had to take care of my brothers. I also was a parent by 17. And in this society, it will quickly tell you that if your decision-making mirrors certain things, then the odds are just completely stacked against you. if you experience homelessness, if you experience foster care, if you experience being a teen parent, if you experience abuse, I mean, there are so many statistics lined up to tell you who you can't be and who you may be forever. Um, and I forget the exact language, but I gave a TED talk and I talked about, like these statistics are, you know, um, information, but they don't get to define, who you are. And I forget how I phrased it exactly in my TED talk, but I think it was some of the adversity that made me realize, like, you can't give up who you are. Like, yes, you're in elementary and middle school taking care of your brothers, but you are still your own person and you still get to have your friends and do things that are fun for you. And yes, you are a teen mom. And while everyone is saying, well, you should just, drop out of high school, maybe you should just go to community college and let go of this idea of getting a bachelor's. Maybe you should just join the military. All things that are great. Like my parents served in the military. I think joining the military is great. I think going to community college, which I did do, is great. But I really had to stand up for myself, and not in this like, no, you all, I'm not doing this, but just in my mind, I had to be committed to how I saw myself and where I saw myself. And even when we were experiencing some of the hardest things as children, for whatever reason, I knew that if I could, I'm a woman of faith, so if I could stay faithful and keep believing and walking my walk, everything that was meant for me would happen. And none of the adversity would ruin that journey, would change it, maybe make it more difficult. And so I just learned to be resilient for myself. And when I became a parent, I would, I would tell other parents, I mostly talked to other moms and was a part of all these moms groups. But I said, like, no, I still want to get my hair done. I still want to go to the gym. I still want to, volunteer at other things not related to my kids. I still want to do things that make me feel really happy. As a spouse, I wanted to still have my own friends and travel other places. And I just find that you have to fight for that. Like literally, when you become an adult and you get a job and it becomes like, well, you just go to work 9 to 5 and come home and eat dinner and then do it all again. You have to really fight to say, I want to enjoy my life. I'm not just going to do that, and I have 4 children. And so really saying like, my life is not just to serve my kids. I love being there for them, but also like there are things that I just want to do with my friends or by myself. So I think experiencing a lot of the adversity and just hearing a lot of the statistics and people telling me what my life should be, I had to say like, no, this is literally how I want to make my life. And it's like that even today. I'm a senator and a CEO, but I have to remind people consistently, I am a woman. I am a Black woman in this country, and I am fighting for the life of this Black woman and like my health and my happiness, separate from all these other things and titles and important responsibilities that I have. Like I want to be a thriving, joyful, like as we talked about earlier, successful in my own right human being for me. And I do have to, tell other things to, not now or later or no, or I can't do it or other people. But I really, the only thing I can think of is just having to fight for my own individuality and for my goals and my pathway, especially with all the things that I've experienced. And when people say fewer than 3% of foster youth will, go to college, or, if you're a teen mom, the chances of you being able to, complete this goal is, and I just had to say, you all, like, I get to also, help to guide this path that I want for myself.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And I still, it's a battle every day of having to remind people of like, or it could be this way that I imagine it for myself, or we could be successful, or it could just be different for me. And I believe that for everyone else.
I love that so much. I feel like I'm going to hear your words in my head now when you're like, you have to fight for that. I'm going to remember. I'm going to have Tawana echoing around in my head. So it has been such a joy and a pleasure to talk to you. I'm so grateful for your time and your insights, but moreover, just your passion in the world and how you're shaping your community. And that's something I just firmly believe is it ripples out. And so your impact reverberates just so far out, probably further than you'll ever know, just because of who you are and how you walk in the world. So thank you. And before I say goodbye, I want to ask you, on behalf of people listening, inspired by our conversation, what is something where they can learn more about some of the things we've been talking about today, a resource, a book, a podcast, whatever it might be, where you might guide people to for extra learnings?
Yeah, I definitely. So again, I love the work that I do professionally. I feel very grateful to be a founder, to be a CEO, to be an elected official. But I know what keeps me going and what helps me is really filling up my cup and prioritizing myself. And I think that just like, especially as a woman and Black woman, really allows my community and everything and everyone around me to thrive. So what I want to recommend, instead of super, professional resources and podcasts, are really some podcasts that help me to build myself as a woman. And so I want to recommend a few of them. And one, and the title of the podcast is Balanced Black Girl, but I think easily any woman can listen to it. But I think listening to the Balanced Black Girl podcast, because it covers so much.
Wonderful. That's great. I just wrote it down. And what about something different that our listeners can think, like a way to challenge their thinking or change their thinking in relation to our conversation today?
That is really great. I think the best advice I can give is to always remember and to think about the best is yet to come. Like, that is the mindset that has really helped me to move forward, because there are going to be some really challenging experiences and days at work, with our kids, with partners, and we have to remember, like, in the next moment, maybe in the next day, in several hours, like, there is so much more positivity and so much more good that is coming. And I think hope can take us a very long way. So I ask people to really think about that hopefulness in the future, and to really keep in mind that the best is yet to come.
I love that so much. And then lastly, what is something that people listening can do?
Take care of yourselves. I know it might sound basic and so easy, but I have a lot of friends and I talk to adults, and I will say, in a lot of my engagements and conversations, I have a lot of adult friends who will tell me, I want to do this, but I can't get disciplined enough, can't get consistent enough, can't find the time. And I don't know that we can be the best for anyone else if we don't find the time to pursue our dreams, to do that hobby, to write the book, to read the book, to just sit and have a cup of coffee. It is, like I said earlier, where sometimes it might feel like we have to fight for it, like we have to be very disciplined and be very assertive. But to find time to take care of ourselves and pour into ourselves and give ourselves what we need, even when, like me, I have when we have a very strong work ethic, when we love our job, when we love our family, but find time to take care of you, to give yourself what you need.
I think it's such a powerful reminder, and one that we can never have too much of. Tawana, thank you so much for this incredible conversation.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been such a joy, and I look forward to hearing other people's reactions and connecting with other folks around this conversation. So
I'm so glad that you asked me that. Oh my gosh, I forgot. What is the best way that people can connect with you?
Yes, well, definitely connect with our work at Black Future Co-op Fund by following us on social media platforms at Black Future WA. You can also follow me at Tawana Nobles, just my first and last name on those social media platforms.
Great. Wonderful. Tawana, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation and got as much out of it as I did. I was like scribbling down all these notes and I have things scribbled all over my piece of paper, but I'm just so grateful that Tawana does this work and shared herself with us and shared her drive and her history and her passion. And a couple of my favorite things that she said is the best is yet to come, which I think I will be repeating to myself and probably my clients in my work with them. But also she talked about you have to fight for putting yourself first and the importance of really just prioritizing your needs and your self-care and filling your own cup. And it is obvious that that is so central to who she is as a change maker. And it really just leapt out at me. So I hope that you have learned so much from this conversation. And until next time, when I cannot wait to share another story of change with you, I hope you have a great one.